So as I was researching this, I was looking at these sort of DAOs, and everybody's talking about decentralized organizations or decentralized finance, and I guess
DeFi.
what DeFi, that was it, yeah, decentralized finance. So essentially, what it seems as though some of this technology does is it takes the power away from a few people or a few organizations, like you gave the example with Facebook, and it distributes the power to many people. Would that be a...
That's exactly it. That's the concept of Web3.
Okay. So in your mind then, I guess in some ways that's great. You know, if you look at finance and look at what's happening in the world at the moment, and certainly what we've all been through for the past few years is you know, centralizing that with certain people that you may or may not agree with may not be the best thing for people. It may not be in the long run. Whereas if it's decentralized, then I suppose, you know, you're a little bit more in control of your destiny. Do you think, as this seems to be the way that people are trying to go, certainly with technology, and that, you know, that's a thread between everything we do. Do you think there's sort of any risks at decentralizing certain things? Because I suppose there's a responsibility, if now we have all of that power as individuals, we also have to take some of that responsibility as well. Because it's like, okay, well, if you're not giving it to someone, I use the example of when you're a kid and your parents, like your parents are probably centralizing and providing a certain amount of protection for you as an individual. If you take them away and you're a kid and you're sort of dealing with stuff that you don't really understand, is there a danger in your mind of sort of maybe that going wrong in any way?
I think so. I think there's a danger in both aspects of it. So again, going back to Satoshi's paper on crypto and Bitcoin with the blockchain, this idea of, he created this idea of the consensus protocol. And what that essentially means is that 51% of the people in this network need to be good actors. So you're making that assumption that 51% or the majority of consensus are going to be acting on good faith. If you go below that, then the system doesn't work and the system fails. So you've got to want to do that. And people are incentivized to be honest and do authentic work, because when you are a miner, you get rewarded by a piece of the blockchain. So you're getting rewarded for doing the right work. And the minute that you're not, you're kicked out and you lose all your value, and then your value goes back to the broader network. But in terms of trust, I've been thinking about this as, you know, today in the Web 2 world, we almost live in a surveillance state or a surveillance economy where most of the largest tech companies monetize off of your data. So you get to use platforms like Google and Facebook or WeChat, WhatsApp, Instagram, essentially for free, but they're really not free, right? They're monetizing and profiting off of your data. What Web3 does is that it flips it around. So instead of the platforms monetizing off of your data, you're now in control of it. And if you want them to use it, you have to give them permission and access to use your data. So that is the big shift between the current economy of today in technology and what the potential for Web3 is.
Yeah, and that's kind of what we spoke about on the boat, which was quite interesting. This shift of power from organisations to individuals, and I suppose at the moment we're all trading, and we're acknowledging. You know, anytime you have a new upgrade on your phone or with Facebook, you're basically clicking to say, okay, we give you permission for that if you want to, you know, if we want these features and benefits that you're going to give us. What I guess for certain people, and maybe even certain organisations who can navigate their way through this, it's like, look, I don't want, particularly if you're trying to compete with these companies, it's like, look, I want to opt out. I don't really want to be part of that. But for the average person on the street, that, you know, this is, and I would class myself probably in that category up until I started to research this. Most of us would be like, okay, well, you know, I don't know anything about it, and I want to use those services, so I'm gonna continue to give it away anyway. How do you sort of, how, as big a shift as this is, do you think, like, where do you think this will go? You know, do you think people will just continue to give access to these individuals? Because if they don't, they're going to lose a lot of the things that they were getting that they enjoyed, and they'll just sort of follow the crowd anyway. Or do you think you'll start to get like a big shift where people are like, okay, I'm going to start taking that, I'm going to empower myself to do that, and then, you know, a whole new ecosystem will develop? Yeah,
so first, I think in every 10 to 15 years, there is a leap in technology. So I mean, going back to World War II, you might have had the mainframes, then you had computers, then you had microcomputers, then you had the internet, then mobile phones. This is that next shift of evolution, is the blockchain. And in each time that the shift happened, it took about a decade for consumers to adapt and evolve to understand it. And that is where we are today. So I think right now, I mean, especially coming out of the pandemic, I feel like people are more in tune with how data works, right? Because they've seen technology become a bigger part of their daily lives, right? Whether it is on their mobile phones, whether how they're engaging with communities. And I think because of some of the leaks and breaches that have happened, consumers understand and say, wow, like my phone, your iPhone today sends over 1,000 data points outwards on you to companies that you might not even know that they're sending, your information to. So as they're becoming more aware of that, that's raised awareness. So I think people are.
Do you think people really know? Like I would class myself as, from what I understand from marketing, get to see a lot of that stuff. And even recently, when people tell me in the know that this is what's happening, I'm like, no, this is just like a kind of, what do they call them? Like these conspiracy theories. You almost like play it down to that. But do you think the average person really understands what is going on with this?
I don't think so. In fact, even me, I'm a technologist. I run a technology company, and until I actually looked at and tracked how many data points are going off of my iPhone, I had no idea. So I don't think the average person does. And I think there's a couple of reasons for that, right? So one, I want to state that it's not like these large tech companies have malicious intent. I think most of them are acting out of providing a good product, trying to find a way to give you a good product and monetize off it. They have to be profitable, right? They have to do that. But at the same time, I don't think they're being as open and honest with what kind of data they're accessing from you and what they're doing with that data. It's not just all to serve you better ads, give you better shows. They're using the data to do deep analysis and deep learning that might not always turn out for the best results.
And I can't help thinking that these companies are run by people like us. They're not sort of super beings. They've grown so quickly, and they seem to have been able, through technology, to accumulate so much power that you have to question, do some of these divisions and departments kind of lose a little bit of a track, and you get quite excited about it, and suddenly we're here now, and it's like, which I think what happened about a year ago with the big social media companies being brought in front of the government in the US, where they suddenly, and it was kept, I feel it was kept quite quiet, but they, something happened where they put their, the government got to grips with these big tech companies, and they put a stop to a lot of it, because you're starting to see, you can no longer do a lot of the things that you could do with advertising and all that kind of stuff. So I can't help thinking that it accelerated to such a speed, and I think everybody got quite worried in terms of where it was going.
I think technology in general, at least in the last 4 decades, has usually been ahead of government regulations and policies, but they've tended to catch up. So when you look at autonomous driving, you look at technology companies like you talked about, you even looked at recently, we're talking about Web3, but crypto, and the crash that crypto's had. Crypto has a lot of self-rules within it, but it's clear that without true regulation, you need something to have guardrails even for cryptocurrency. So yes, government and consumers are starting to get caught up in terms of how they're using data and what they're doing with it. It's happening.